well what they have there.
It is. Yes. I watched it was a couple weeks ago. I watched over a couple days. I think it was like the 1940-some version of 1984. And it was good. I mean, scary. Scary. All right, so listen. Last things we talked about were different forms of government based upon different criteria. The first one we talked about geographic distribution of power. So if you did not see that lecture online because you were on the march, you need to look over that, take notes on it, and so forth. Okay? The next thing we're looking at is the number of people that can participate. Different forms of government based on the number of people that can participate. You have that down?
Yep.
All right, so I can move in and talk about dictatorships.
Dictatorship.
Woo!
Well, as you can imagine,
What is that, Mr.
Jack, front corner. As you can imagine, dictatorships are going to limit the number of people that can participate and make decisions in government, correct?
Correct.
All right. Hamlin, unless you're ready to move, you need to refocus. All right, now, I'm going to give you a couple of characteristics, okay, of dictatorships. The first is that all are authoritarian by nature. Authoritarian by nature. Power is absolute and unchangeable. Authoritarian. Power is absolute and unchangeable. Now, I should give you a definition of dictatorship, shouldn't I? Those who rule do not follow the will of the people. Those who rule do not follow the will of the people. That's a dictatorship. And by virtue, all dictatorships are authoritarian. Now, another description of dictatorships, some are totalitarian or totalitarianistic, which is a long word. Totalitarian means to rule by force, some would say with an iron fist, over every aspect of life.
The sales in 1984 have actually skyrocketed since Donald Trump was elected.
Yeah, that's weird because he's for decentralization.
And now,
That's that Kool-Aid people are drinking. Yeah. Now, okay, so one of the most confusing parts about dictatorships, guys, for people is that when people think dictatorships, they think dictator, one person. But in reality, guys, dictatorships can be ruled by many people or by rule by one. Okay, so we have two terms here. So rule by one is what? Good. An autocracy. Auto, meaning one, okay? Autocracy. Or some might say autocracy. The other is oligarchy, which is ruled by few. Yes. Rule by few. Sorry? Oligarchy. Alex.
Is there a difference, would you say, between a tyrant and a dictator, or is it kind of the same
I think there's a difference. It's a word usage difference. Like, you have tyrants that aren't dictators. Yes.
Would a triumviral system be considered an oligarchy?
What?
Like three dictators, triumvirate? You ever heard of that?
Yeah. I think that would fit in an oligarchy. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
You said you defined dictatorship as those who rule and do not follow the will of the people.
Those who rule that do not follow the will of the people.
So is it something else then if they do follow the will of the people?
Yes. Generally democratic.
But you can have complete total power.
No, yeah, he's total power.
The monarch.
Can you have complete total power and have the will of the people? And it be
No, you don't follow the will of the people. So you don't govern by the will of the people.
I understand that, but can you have the will
Oh.
of the people which do follow the will?
Like
Yeah, I mean, when the Jews asked God for David, for a king.
Total power. That would be considered kingship.
Okay, so within the realm of these, we're going to get different types of dictatorships. We've had some mentioned here. So an example of an autocracy would be a monarch. Okay, good. Guys, there's still around 40 of these around. True monarchy. True monarchies, okay? Now, Britain, you guys know, has a monarch, right? But that's called a constitutional monarch. See, the real power lies somewhere else with the Constitution, not with the monarch. Does that make sense? And we'll get into that a little bit more later, okay? So a true monarchy is autocratic. And how do you become a monarch? You're born. It's hereditary.
conquer the crap out of something.
Yeah.
Generally, it's a hereditary position, right?
Well, not anymore.
Oh my gosh.
Generally. Generally.
What do you mean not in England?
Well, you see it.
Who's going to become the king when Queen Elizabeth II dies?
It's like 900 AD. The
King William.
Normans came over and they conquered.
Yeah, we're not doing that. Okay? Now, can you think of another type of dictatorship? What?
Theocracy.
Good, a theocracy. Now, can any of you think of a modern day
Say it, Alex.
theocracy?
Vatican City.
Wait, is it?
Isn't the Pope elected?
The Muslims.
Saudi Arabia.
We're not going to recognize ISIS.
Saudi Arabia.
Yeah, there.
Saudi Arabia is a monarch. They have a king.
That's true.
Iran.
Bam! Right there.
What do you say?
It's run by the Ayatollahs. What's that? Iran?
No, I meant the
Oh, the Ayatollahs. That's the religious leader of Iran. They do have a president in Iran, but the president is a puppet of the Ayatollahs. Okay? They really control the country.
So,
Okay?
how do you come to power?
In the case of the Iranian regime, revolution.
Every time?
No, in the case of the Iranian regime, revolution.
But every time you get a new ruler in Iran.
Yeah, it's kind of. I guess there are different imams that they choose from
So,
to be the supreme leader.
It's kind of like Vatican City, though.
yeah.
Like the Pope.
Yeah, it does seem kind of like Vatican City.
Yeah, hey, if you guys want to call Vatican City a dictatorship, you can do that. I'm not going
It
to.
is.
I mean, it is.
I mean, no.
I don't care.
No, technically Vatican City, it's a monarchy because the Pope is both, he's the king of Vatican City and the Pope. No, it's legit. He's actually, his title is the king of Vatican City.
Wait, what?
Yes, he's the
Wait, what?
The Pope is technically.
Richenberger, you got anything on this? Either one of you? Is the Pope a dictator?
The Pope's holy.
The Pope is technically a king.
What do you follow the
Who is our religious advisor
Not
in here?
necessarily.
Well, don't understand.
Yeah, I don't know.
Come on, Marcus.
Okay, just because it's like a
I've not looked
dictatorship
into
doesn't mean it's
political.
bad.
Oh, yeah, you're right.
Vatican City
You're
is
right.
like straight 100 square feet. You know what I mean?
Dictatorship was not a dirty word until really about the 1920s, 1930s.
Yeah,
And fascism wasn't seen as a bad word
History books.
until about 1940, 39, 40.
Would Lincoln be considered a dictator?
Who?
Lenin?
Lenin? Yeah.
Vladimir?
Yeah, that guy.
Yeah.
Well, I didn't know if he's a communist.
So, all right, let's not get ahead of ourselves. All right, so let's say, all right, think of some other dictators besides the Pope.
The Pope.
Give me a name.
Kim Jong-un.
Kim Jong-un. Now, if you see Kim Jong-un in a picture, what is he generally wearing?
A suit.
Some like
No idea.
A Mandarin suit. A black outfit.
What, are you kidding me?
What color is
Rodman's
it?
jersey.
Then-
Red?
huh?
Are you looking for red?
What did Stalin wear?
Red.
Oh, yeah.
You were
Red. You wanting us to say red?
Like,
No, you said no to red.
What kind of clothes do these dictators wear? Military uniforms.
But it's a Mandarin suit still. I wasn't wrong.
He also wears a military uniform.
He actually wears it's really kind of East Asia.
What are we saying?
It's very rare.
Kim Jong-un is a military dictatorship. Stalin, military dictatorship. Hitler, military dictatorship. Castro, military dictatorship. Okay? These are your different types of dictatorships. Okay? Now, economic systems are different than this. And we're going to talk about economic systems tomorrow, but it's important to kind of understand these are your main three types of dictatorships. Okay? Monarchies, theocracies, and military dictatorships. Most of them today are these. 20th century. Okay, 21st century. Most of these are military dictatorships. Okay? Now, as far as an oligarchy goes, probably the best example of an oligarchy, because a lot of these are autocratic, if you will. Okay, China is a good example of an oligarchy. 1.3 billion Chinese people, right? Less than 1% of them are members of the Communist Party. Membership has its privileges, which means you get to elect, if you're a member of the Communist Party in China, you get to elect the leader from amongst the party members. Okay? There are thousands of Chinese Communist Party members. Okay? They make up the elite in the communist nation of China. But wait a second, Mr. Ebright. I thought in communism everyone's equal. Well, no. That's not communism. Communism turns into a dictatorship in every instance it's been tried. Okay? Including China. Now, Chairman or President Xi, okay, has just been awarded like this new, well, it's not new, but he's the first one since Mao to achieve this elevated status in China. Xi's wife is very popular. They are a popular power couple in China, all right? And he's doing very well for his family. So this is run by the oligarchs. It's ruled by the powerful. Okay, Russia was supposed to be the same way and was for many years. So Lenin was not the dictator that Stalin became. See, the Politburo in the Soviet Union elects the chairman of the party, which was Lenin and then became Stalin. Stalin became this dictator because he was paranoid about all the other members of the party that wanted his job. And so he insulated himself and really became a dictator. Okay, he did not take orders from anybody. He did not listen to the will of the party, let alone the people. Does that make sense? And then when he died, you get Khrushchev. And then Khrushchev is not near the dictator of Stalin. Okay, in fact, you would call it the leader of a dictatorship, but not a dictator, Khrushchev. Does that make sense? Because he's an oligarch. He's the leader of the party. Okay, so there's a difference, and some of them are wide differences, and some of them are narrow differences. All right, so hey, all right. Next thing we're going to is number of people that can participate. We're going to democracy. All right, and as we've already established today, there's a couple different types of democracy, and we'll start with Rousseau's democracy. How about that? The Greek for democracy, demo, okay, people. Rule by the people. Okay? Now, you want me to define it? Rule by the people. All right, I'll give it more formal than that. Supreme political authority or sovereignty rests with the people. That's democracy. Supreme political authority or sovereignty rests with the people. So, this is direct or pure democracy. Everyone votes on every issue. Everyone has a say in every decision. Now, we just talked about this. Would this be possible today? It kind of might be possible to do today, right? Is it possible to do in 1950 in the United States of America? It's so big.
Hold on a minute. Is it possible to do today?
Huh?
Is it
We went
possible?
through the phone thing.
With the phones, yeah.
Like, there's so many issues with that. Like, that's just.
Well,
Theoretically, Tristan.
could we do it not would it work
Well,
well?
who decides which issues we're voting on?
We do.
So,
decide
whether or not there's going to be votes?
Yes.
We vote on
Decide
issues.
when those votes happen. How do we get the ball rolling with the initial vote?
God.
That's what I'm saying.
You haven't-
Like, you can't even have a
spend so much time on the phones.
People
Okay.
just have to throw up.
Are you
issues.
taking logic class?
No.
Well, maybe you should.
I probably should.
Go bother those people.
I don't need to. What are your questions, Tristan? I'm here.
Don't worry, we'll leave it to Mr. Graver.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm not sure, guys. Just ask a question about it.
We're not talking about other teachers.
No. We need to get
You're talking about logic.
We need to get Mr. Kraft on the horn and see
Yeah,
what
we're
he's
talking about
his next vote.
Peter Rath.
Creek?
I've heard him mention that guy.
He's the one who wrote the logic book.
Okay. All right, so there's really not a lot to discuss there. Okay? The second type is representative democracy. Okay? Otherwise known as a... Okay, to define this, a republic or a representative democracy is a small group of people are chosen by the people to represent the will
One might call
of the
them
people.
Specialists.
Yeah. So, people select a small group of people to represent their interests. Now, in our society today, that could be the city council, the county commission, school board, the state legislature, the United States Congress, the governor, the president, the mayor. Those people are all chosen to represent our will. Yes?
So Rome was the Roman Republic. Was it actually a republic? Because how much
Okay, so listen. Roman history is a lot longer than our history. So during different time periods of Roman history, they had different strengths of government and different.
Oh, do you think we'll ever have different strengths of government?
Well, yeah, it's changing all the time.
What are you getting at?
With the Romans,
Yes.
I just got to be plain honest with you. I'm not an expert in Roman history. I teach American history.
What was the question?
He doesn't remember.
I asked, was Rome actually a republic?
Says a republic.
It was.
It was.
They were divided up
in
into.
They had what they did is they basically every new term of I think it's around 3 to 4 years, they elected 2 consuls, and basically what those consuls would do is they were allowed to take control of the armies, and then they would go off and pillage, make a name for themselves, so they could give themselves governorship of some good land, but to become consul, which was basically every senator's goal, you had to have support of a lot of other people, and they had to be very rich. I mean, basically, it was sort of a republic, but it was basically just a republic for the rich people, and they got to just decide.
And the military powerful.
Yeah,
Right.
because rich people in the military basically decided
Yeah.
what they did.
Yeah.
Can you be?
Thank you, Jack. Okay. All right, now, so you guys understand, we elect people to make decisions for us. Yes? Okay, now I'm going to make it confusing. Because this is easy. Okay? So, different systems that are used for republics. Okay? And I'm going to talk about 2. One is called the presidential system, and the other is the parliamentary system. We're going to talk about the presidential first. So this would go under Republican government or representative democracy. Okay? Now, presidential systems have certain characteristics, and we use a presidential system. Most republics use a parliamentary system. We are the exception. Okay? Now, in our system, in a presidential system, the legislature and the executive, these branches are separate. There is a wall between these 2 branches. This is your proverbial separation of powers. When President Obama was elected in 2008, he was a sitting member of the United States Senate. When he became president or the chief executive, he could not remain in the Senate. They are separate. Does that make sense? Okay? You can't be in both in our system. That's important to how the checks and balances work and so forth. Okay? Also, the president is elected by who? The people.
Well, the electors.
The electors are elected by the people who elect the president. The electors?
Yeah, the
Yeah.
electors.
In the state of Kansas. No. There are people you probably don't know their name. You don't know who they are.
I mean, Mark, it's
You can look up their names.
The amount of electors based on the senators. I mean, no, honestly, sometimes it's just it's just past politicians or just
members of the party.
just businessmen.
Yeah. We'll get it. I promise, guys. We're going to talk all about the Electoral College. Yeah.
And presidential or
Parliamentary. Yeah.
Yes.
Well, they wanted to keep the emperor, okay?
No,
But we didn't want the emperor to have power.
We wrote their constitution. Yes, we made it that
Yeah.
way.
Okay. I answer all these questions in the course of due time without people asking, actually, because I think of everything you're going to ask.
Everything?
I've been doing this for 20 years. But I'll never get there if I have to keep stopping and saying, hey, I'm going to cover that. But if it is a pressing question and you need to ask it, go ahead.
I only ask.
Okay. Now, president is elected by the people. Now, here's another factor. Our president is both head of state and chief executive. The presidential system, the president is both. So if the Martians were to come to Wichita, from Mars,
Oh my God, the Green Monster invading.
and they say, take me to your leader, okay? We take them to the president. He's the head of state. He's the figurehead of the country. Who's the leader of the United States? Donald J. Trump, okay?
What makes you think that they would ask, where is your leader? Because they may be so advanced they no longer require.
Is there a mute button?
You should have heard what he said.
Yeah, Mr. Levi, when I'm back there, tell me to shut up.
He said it.
Now, the other thing is, who runs the day-to-day affairs of the executive branch of the country is the chief executive. And that is also the president. The head of the executive branch, which is the head of the Department of Justice, Defense, State, Education, Energy, Veterans Affairs, Homeland Security, and the CIA, the FBI, the FFA, the FCC, the FTC, the IRS, the EPA, I don't know, I might be repeating myself. No. The SEC or the TVA, yes. That is all under the executive branch. That's the day-to-day affairs. This is the figurehead. He is both. Okay? So when President Trump gives the State of the Union address later this month, he comes as both the leader of the country and the chief executive. Now, parliamentary systems are far more complicated than this. But some would say better than our system. Now, parliamentary, can you spell that?
Yeah.
It's parliamentary. Okay, now, we'll do a little bit of a focus on Great Britain because that's just easy, and then we can segue from there to Japan and other places. Okay, so with Great Britain, you have to be an MP to be PM. You have to be an MP to be the PM.
Member of Parliament to be a Prime Minister.
Good. Okay. You have to be a member of Parliament.
There's only with Britain, right?
Generally, in parliamentary systems, you have to be a member because the legislature, which is the Parliament, is connected to the executive. They're connected. They are not divided. You can't become the prime minister unless you're a member of the legislature. Because who elects you? Parliament. Okay? So they elect the prime minister.
We elect the legislature.
Now, when we started this country and they were talking about what kind of government we're going to have, there were members of the Constitutional Convention that wanted the Congress to elect the president. And then there were others who said, no, let the people. And they were like, hell no, we're not doing that, right? We'll set up this thing called the Electoral College. Okay? We'll set up the Electoral College. Okay, now, so that is a fundamental difference, okay, between parliamentary systems and presidential. Okay? Now, when we get into this thing called the head of state and a parliamentary system is different than the chief executive. So in the case of Great Britain, the chief executive is whom? The prime minister, and her name is Theresa May, and the head of state of Great Britain is Queen Elizabeth II. Go.
The legislative executive, the legislative elect the executive?
Yeah.
Both, or executive elect.
The people elect the parliament. The parliament elects the prime minister.
Okay. So both the legislative and executive elect the prime minister. Good now.
The people don't elect the prime minister.
Okay, yeah. So like the legislative elects the executives.
What? Are you speaking English? You're saying that so fast or something I can't understand.
The legislative, right?
Yeah.
Elects the executive.
Yes.
And then do both the legislative and executive elect the prime minister, or just?
No, the
executive.
prime minister is the executive.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. The prime minister is the chief exec.
So who elects the head of state and then electoral?
That-
Probably legislative.
The people. These are different. Okay, this is the queen. This is ceremonial. There's no power here with the head of state in a parliamentary system. So let's saunder over to Japan. Saunder.
Like that.
No, I didn't put a T in that.
I'm saying.
All right, so, hey, Japan's head of state is who?
Shinzo Abe. Prime Minister Shinzo Abe.
No, head of state.
Oh.
Emperor.
Ching dong.
Emperor, what's his face?
Don't be racist.
Emperor, what's his face? I don't know.
Hirohito, he's dead, right?
Yeah.
Hideki Tojo.
The emperor.
Yeah, the emperor's the head of state, and the prime minister is.
Shinzo Abe. Sorry, my mistake. Chiang Kai-shek.
Yeah.
Prime Minister.
No, he's Chinese. We're talking about Japan. Now,
Wait, what?
Chiang Kai-shek.
Japan and China are different?
They're being idiots. That's what's happening here. Okay. Now, all right, let's jump over to Germany and make it really confusing. Who runs the day-to-day affairs in the parliamentary system of Germany? Now we've really reached the juvenile status that I was hoping for out of an honors government class. That's pathetic.
The prime minister.
Let's get this going.
The
Who?
Prime Minister?
No. Who runs Germany? What do they call that person? There is a president, but this isn't the person I'm speaking of.
The Prime Minister.
Not the chief executive.
Jack.
Head of state said they were useless.
Her name is Angela Merkel, and her title is. No! Chancellor!
Chancellor. So is that head of state or chief executive?
Okay, so not only maturation-wise we're struggling here. Chancellor of Germany, Angela Merkel, she runs the day-to-day affairs. She's the chief executive. Who is the head of state of Germany? They don't have a king or an emperor. And Hitler's dead.
Real dead.
The president.
Yes. There is a president. Come over here. There is a president of Germany in a parliamentary system, which really makes it confusing. In Russia, they use a parliamentary system. What is Putin?
He's the president.
He's the prime minister, isn't he?
Is it primary?
He's the prime minister. The president is ceremonial. The prime minister. So, like, they had term limits there in Russia. Okay? So this is what happened. Putin was the prime minister. Then he used up his term limits. And then he became president and handpicked, what's his name? Medvedev, to be the new prime minister. Basically handpicked him. And then Medvedev served his 2 terms. And then Putin came back as prime minister. Because that's allowed in the Russian constitution. Okay? So, president can be used in a parliamentary system, but generally they are the head of state. That makes sense. That is ceremonial. All right? So there's your difference between a parliamentary. Now, what also makes these systems a little more volatile, Theresa May in Great Britain, or Angela Merkel in Germany, or Benjamin Netanyahu in Israel could at any time call for new elections of the Prime Minister or the Chancellor. Or members of Parliament can have a vote of no confidence in the Parliament and call for new elections at any time. So let's say we're having this debate right now.
Wait.
Just let him finish this.
What was unclear about that?
No, you're saying the chief executive can at any time call for new elections?
Yep.
Not the head of state?
Correct.
Okay.
Yep.
The head of state is
Fire me, please.
So, this happens quite a bit because let's say Theresa May she's the Prime Minister of Britain right now, okay? She feels like the Conservative Party is attacking her and saying that she's wrong on this issue and that she has become unpopular. And so she says, okay, well, let's just go ahead and find out. I'll call for new elections to show her support that she thinks she has. And if those elections take place and it shows that, and she's reelected, then it just gives her more power. Because it showed, I'm willing to put my job on the line to show you I'm right, and I have the support I need to move forward with what I want. So let's have an election and see. Now, we don't do that kind of crap around here, okay? Everything in our presidential system is orchestrated. The candidates, the presidents, they all have their speeches written for them, their clothes picked out for them. Everything is done like Hollywood.
It's a popularity contest.
It is. It has become a popularity contest. Now, what's great about the parliamentary system is because these prime ministers are members of the parliament, they're answerable to the parliament. They have to go to the parliament and they have to take questions from the parliament. So if you watch this is what the House of Commons looks like in Britain. Okay, they don't use the theater system like the theater stage setup like the House and Senate does. Okay, so over here you got the Tories or the Conservatives. Okay, and then over here you have the Labour Party or your leftists. Okay, and Theresa May is on the left. She's the PM. Okay, over here is the minority leader. And the minority leader gets to question the prime minister, as do members of the party over here. They get to yell at her and ask her questions. And then this guy gets to stand up and make fun of her and call her names and challenge her. And she has to respond. She has to stand up and respond to that criticism right there and then in front of everybody. Which makes sure that your prime ministers are not only intelligent, but they're quick on their feet, and a little bit of wit and humor goes a long way. Okay, because if you're quick, you're in a debate, and you can put somebody down and everybody laughs about it, well, you're winning. You just watch Stephen Colbert. I mean, he will never lose a debate on his show. Okay, because he's the comedian. Just like Jon Stewart, when he used to have his show. He'd never lose a debate. He has writers that write all these jokes for him, so he's funny. And he makes them look smart. But in reality, is Jon Stewart really that smart? I don't think so. Take him off script. Put him in front of somebody that really knows what they're talking about. Okay. Just like President Trump or President Obama. Now, I'm not saying President Obama wasn't a smart guy or President Bush. You put those guys in a one-on-one situation where they don't have a script and they got to answer and people can make fun of them.
I don't think Bush would handle that too
Now,
well.
Bush, from what I heard, like if you're in a room with him and you're sitting there talking to him, he comes off as extremely intelligent.
Yeah, he was a real personable guy.
Yeah.
Once you put him in front of the cameras,
Yeah.
he just stuttered and mumbled through his words.
What words? Yeah, he made up stuff, right? Made up new words. Strategery. Yeah.
Hey, mission accomplished.
Mission accomplished. So this is something that, guys, we need to look back upon and just be able to recall the difference between a parliamentary system and a presidential system. Okay? This is something that, as we form a new government in this country, we want to understand the differences there. But that pretty much covers that. I'm not going to get started other than to give you the headline for the notes tomorrow. Okay, the thing we're going to start with. So we've talked about different forms of government based on geographic distribution of power, confederal, federal, and unitary. We've looked at different forms of government based on the number of people that can participate, dictatorships and democracies. Now we're going to look at different forms of government based upon economic theories. Different forms of government based upon economic theories. You guys have a wonderful day.